Welcome back to my channel. I'm Traben, and in this video we're going to be doing Epic Series Summer Update number 4, or as I'm calling it, Epic Sanderson Summer. All of last month, pretty much, I read one book, essentially, because I was taking a look at Oathbringer. And I made a few updates about this. I made a few shorts talking about my complex feelings about reading one of these super huge Stormlight Archives epic Sanderson titles. From the beginning of the month of August until I think it was like the very last week, I was just reading this book. Getting through it very slowly, and feeling, much as I did with the first book once I was done, that there was a lot going on. There's a lot of lore being revealed, a lot of plot getting resolved, and things happening, but I still feel like it could have been shorter. I don't feel like it needed to be 1,200 pages, and I do feel like, especially with the subject matter of book 3, this one really dragged for me. I did end up giving it a 4 out of 5 because once I was done, I was chatting with some friends about it, and I was like, no, there is like a lot going on. We have this happen, and these minor characters get development, and this was really emotionally impactful for me. But the gist of the story, or at least the point of the story we're at with Oathbringer, which is book 3 of the Stormlight Archives, is just a lot of losses, like compounded losses, until you get up to the very ending, maybe the last 150, 200 pages, and then it starts being these like epic moments, these really cool set pieces, and all this lore dropping and figuring out these different things, and it's all very cool at the very end. But I did have to slog through a lot of things that were not going anywhere, and were very plotting and very slow. And I think part of my issue with it is we are following so very many characters in an effort to create this very rich world, nuanced perspective. We have to have the main POV characters that we've been following, but also all these minor POV characters. We have to see things happening on both sides of the war in order for our larger thematic ideas to have a chance to breathe. But because we're bouncing between so many perspectives, it means each one of those stories is moving forward so slow. So to kind of illustrate what I mean, I went and looked at the plot for Wind and Truth, which is book 5 of the Stormlight Archive. So another whole like 1,200, 1,300 page book, as well as a novella, stands between me and like getting to book 5 at this point. And I read the synopsis, and I'm like, that's pretty much already, like, all the conflicts they're talking about are pretty much already established in this book. It feels like what's going to happen in book 4 if book 5 already sounds like something that is taking off directly from what happens in this book. My assumption is that it's going to be another one of these very slow moving plotting books where, grand scheme of things, like, a lot of stuff happens, right? But grand scheme of things, very little time passes because we're diving into the minutia of every single thing that's happening. I don't know. I'm gonna read through book 4. I'm gonna read through book 5. That's supposed to be the summation of the first arc of this series. And because book 5 is coming out in December, I've got the Thanksgiving break to read through Rhythm of War, which is book 4. I'm already starting on the novella, which I'll talk about in a second. And so I don't know, like, it seems maybe once I'm caught up and it's like there'll be one book every couple of years, it'll be different. But this just seems like such a monumental task to read, and feels not as satisfying as some other Sanderson books. Again, like, I'll talk about some things I've read recently that were just more engaging, and I don't feel like the epic story, the like globe spanning story is really what I want from Sanderson. I kind of like his smaller character studies rather than this like sprawling thing. As far as the book itself and the things that it discusses, we've got again a lot of like losses in the book. We've got a lot of the team going out, the various teams going out and suffering a loss here, trying to mount some sort of counter attack or counter strategy in the capital, and that doesn't work. We've got Dalinar trying to reconcile his previous war crimes with his current need for being kind of an intermediary and more of a leader, like more politicking leader, and his struggles with that, his struggles with his past. So he is the POV character for this chapter, or for this book. Each book has it has the same characters it's following, but each book has one character whose past we're diving into, and this one is Dalinar's, and I thought I'd care about it more than I did, honestly. The takeaways from it, again, are interesting and definitely work toward that idea of mending relationships and taking ownership of what you've done in the past without letting it define you for the rest of your life moving forward. I think those are very good thematic messages and very complicated ones. But again, it rolls out so slow over the course of the book. And I found myself, even when there's a point where he was under some sort of gios to where he couldn't hear his wife's name, or his ex-wife's name, or remember anything about her, and there comes a point where he hears her name again and he's like, can you repeat what you just said? And he hears it again, and it was this very exciting moment, because up until that point you've had this like scratch to scratch, sound going off every time the name is said, to where he can't hear it. And I thought that would be more exciting than it was, and it was kind of interesting for a chapter or two, but again, then it drags that story out so long over the course of the book that it just becomes tedious. Like, yes, we get to an ending that's very satisfying, very exciting, very big, like, set piece of this battle, but all the stories are like that, where it's just like these tiny steps as we go on throughout the book and diving into the minutia of these characters' lives and the politicking that they're doing. The investigation that's going on that kind of kicks off the whole thing seems in the end to not super matter, because then the person admits to it and everyone's just kind of like, huh, okay. Like, all right. I mean, it served another purpose. Shallan become her Veil personality and run an investigation, and that was kind of fun, but then that wraps up like within the first third of the book, and then it doesn't really matter going forward. Like, she repels this monster and it like gets away, and then later on there's another one that she fights that's the same kind of monster but not really, and so it kind of tries to draw a connection between those. That's fine. I will still say Shallan remains my favorite character, and I really enjoyed her internal struggle with these different personas she creates, and her feeling like she is losing control of who she is as an individual and struggling with her identity in a very like real, visceral way, to where she's worried that these personalities that she creates and embodies are taking over her personality and she needs to like rein them in. That goes some very interesting places and wraps up in a satisfying way. The other characters, like, I kind of get what Dalinar is struggling with, but I don't think it needed to be the whole book. I don't know what Kaladin's really struggling with in this particular book. He seems to kind of be over his nonsense. So like his story was not very compelling going through. We had the other Bridge 4 members. Some interesting things happened with them. But yeah, I just feel like it's pulling in a bunch of different directions and moving everybody's character progression like glacially forward. And so yeah, at the end of the day, I gave it 4 out of 5. I felt like the end was good enough to be fun and to be a satisfying close to that particular book, but I'm finding the actual process of reading through the book was more draining than I remember book 2 being, or even book 1 being. At least when Kaladin was struggling in book 1, I didn't particularly like him yo-yoing back and forth, but at least it made sense. In this one, it feels like he's just kind of adrift. He has some stuff about like protecting people, protecting his enemies, and struggling with that particular promise that he's pledged to do. Ultimately, don't feel like it was even resolved, and it just seemed a way to cast more doubt in his mind as to what he's doing rather than to actually flesh out the character. I feel like his character development was almost nothing in this book. So that's just my takeaway from it. And I know people love Kaladin. I know they're like, he's a fan favorite. I do not like him. He's probably my least favorite of the series. So that's my thoughts on Oathbringer. Again, like, I still gave it 4 stars. I still overall enjoyed it. I just felt like it was too slow. It needed to pick up. I don't think it needed to be 1,200 pages. Last I was talking, I had finished up Alloy of Law. I've since read Shadows of Self, and I'm more than halfway through Bands of Mourning. So these are the Mistborn Era 2 books, and this is more the pace that I enjoy Sanderson. These are like 500 pages or so. Yeah, about 450 for this one, and then this is probably a little bit lengthier, about 500 for Bands of Mourning. A lot of good things to say about this particular series, and I do feel like Mistborn Era 1 is probably my favorite Sanderson trilogy so far that I've like finished up. I found it a very satisfying read throughout and a very good ending as well. I feel like sometimes Sanderson his writing kind of falls apart in the last act and doesn't quite work for me. But not the case with Mistborn Era 1. I thought that was strong throughout. What I am liking about Mistborn Era 2 is how, because it is set in the future of the first era of Mistborn, and those characters have kind of ascended into like legend or god status at this point in time, I like the parallels that they draw between the characters here and the characters from the first Mistborn series. Here we follow Wax, who is a lawman. He is a constable, and he was out in the roughs for a while, which is like the Wild West, essentially. Now he's back in society. He's actually part of the aristocracy, so he's trying to manage between like his previous like lawman days that he still itches to do and his current need to be like head of his household and secure their finances and do all that kind of proper house organizing. And like I said, one of the things I really liked about it is how they draw parallels between him and the characters from the first set of books who were all thieves. People are pointing out like, hey, what side of history would you have been on when these characters were rebelling against society? You are a lawman. Would you have been like the tool for the monarchy, for the emperor at the time, and his kind of pushing back against that. And I just think it's an interesting contrast there. The second book, I thought, when I first read book one, I was very surprised. I think I mentioned this with my previous review, with the end of the prologue. It was very shocking. And what I liked about the second book was how already, by the end of the second book, we've gone back and already recontextualized the beginning of the first book and Wax's previous relationships and his purpose in life. And we've tied it in with Harmony, who's a character from the original books who's now ascended to godhood. So all very cool, like playing around with the narrative and creating parallels and the ability to compare and contrast this title with the previous series. The other thing I really like about it is, because it is ostensibly a Western, each of the books has some sort of mystery that you have to go solve. He has a case that he gets, and then he has to go investigate and go question people. And his partner, Wayne, is very much someone who is very good at impersonating other people and like getting into places that he probably shouldn't, and impersonating personalities, or impersonating like voices and different linguistic things. And so it's fun seeing them work together and try to investigate. The second book did a very good job of upping the stakes and still keeping the narrative focused on a common thread. So this is something, again, that I talk frequently about with sequels and series books, the difficulty of the middle books in particular to present a cohesive story on their own, but also serve as a building block for a larger narrative that's being developed for the series as a whole. And I think this did an excellent job of balancing both of those things. The villain that we are trying to capture, essentially, or try to get back, is connected with Wax's past and is connected to his faith, which he is questioning whether or not he is doing the right thing. And so for that characterization, I think that it is very effective. I'll also say that this book starts playing with his relationship with his fiance, which started off in the first book. I did not really care for her. Her name's Steris. I did not really care for Steris, but this book really started to develop their relationship, and I'm coming around. And then I'll mention the third book is further exploring this relationship between them, and it's really great to see the ways that he interacts with different members of the supporting cast, further developing his character in a number of interesting ways. I feel like the first book really did focus more on Wax and Wayne together with Maracy, who is Steris's, I think, half-sister, and someone who's now working with the precinct, another person involved in law. She has very progressive ideas about interrogations and investigation and how to go about solving crimes and things like that. And so I felt like the first book really focused on that character, Maracy, as well as Wax and Wayne's relationship, and developing that. I feel like this starts developing Steris a bit more as a character, and then that continues on into the third book. So this one was one that was great. I think I gave it 5 stars. But I really had a good time with this. I was so reluctant to start Mistborn Era 2 because of my love for the first series, but I'm pleasantly surprised with how much lore and how much connective tissue there is between the two series. About halfway through Bands of Mourning, and this is another one that is doing an excellent job with the same type of setup, but developing threads that have been established in books 1 and 2. So we once again have a mystery of sorts that's happening within the book. He is, this time Wax is contracted by the Khandra, which are like these immortal beings, to go investigate the disappearance or the I can't remember if the character, I can't recall if the character died or if the character was just assaulted and like they're still shaken up about it. But there is someone out, like way outside of the main city, who is doing something that troubles the Khandra. We get a lot of talk in this book about the larger Cosmere workings, because for those who don't know, all the events from Mistborn, as well as Stormlight Archives, Elantris, Emperor's Soul, there's another one, I think Warbreaker? What's the last book? I can't remember. Anyway, a number of these Sanderson books all take place in the Cosmere, which is a shared universe. And these are all just different planets. So the Mistborn books take place on Scandriel. The Stormlight Archives books take place on Roshar. There are other planets in that universe that all share the same base magic system. Not really, but like on a macro scale, there's this concept of the self, the individual, and investiture. And there's more talk. The most direct talk I can recall seeing in any of these books about investiture in this book, and talking about how people could manipulate it potentially to make anybody have powers on Scandriel, and it's like a really big deal. So the lore drop was also fun to see. That was the first I'd really gotten an overview of this overarching magic system that all these different books fall under. Again, fun investigation thing. The focus on this one is a lot more on like pairings, I feel. So it's much more like Wax and Steris together, and them like playing off each other in really funny and cute ways, and then Marcy and Wayne kind of going off on investigations, and possibly a relationship developing there, or at least like they're getting more comfortable with each other. At the very least, they're becoming better friends. And so I think, again, it's fun to see the development of these characters. I know I just complained about gradual character development within the Stormlight Archives book, but the major difference here is that character development is going on behind the scenes while they are actively investigating several different cases. Like they're already on their third case at this point. One of the things that recently occurred within this book is it was revealed that things that are happening around them are like red herrings to try to get Wax like off the trail of the real thing that's going on. And they're just like, oh yeah, like he can't stand his expertise coming into question. And they're like, yeah, well, you said that, but like this train robbery was supposed to derail him and that didn't work. And so currently some very serious things are happening. We also in this book get a wider view of Scandriel and the societies outside of the main city, which is where our focus has been on the last two books. So not only the city's relationship with the other like satellite cities around it, but also this notion that there are the cities and then there are the roughs, like the desert outside, like way outside civilization. And then there is a sea, and there are other places out in the world, but nobody bothers to investigate them. Nobody bothers to explore. And there's a character that was bringing up, like, why do you think that is? Why isn't there a drive to go somewhere else? And it was brought up in the previous book by Harmony, who's a god at this point, that they're worried that they made things too comfortable for people. He mentions like the radio and some other key inventions and says like, yeah, because I've tried to make you comfortable, you've not had to struggle and adapt and create and push yourselves, and so he's doubting himself. So I'm wondering if the bigger plot overall has something to do with that and with pushing society to become better by injecting more conflict because they've had it too easy for too long. These kind of ideas have been brought up since the very beginning of the book, and also this idea that this comfort has also resulted in a new stratification of society, the thing that they worked so hard against in the very first book to eliminate and stop from happening. So again, interesting parallels between the books, a lot of fun. Unless something drastic happens, probably another 5-star. I really enjoy the Mistborn Era 2 setting and the characters, for sure. And then finally, I did start up on Dawnshard. I'm just a little ways in, but it is a novella, so I don't imagine it's going to take me too terribly long. And if you look at like an individual page, they're very small pages with rather large print, so it reads very quickly. Dawnshard is a book that takes place between Oathbringer and Rhythm of War and deals with piracy, basically. It's like a sailing adventure. They're trying to go investigate this island with this really weird like phenomenon barrier around it. Supposedly it's like an ancient civilization is there, and they might find some really important answers to what happened on Roshar. I don't know. So far, I've just basically got the hook. The characters are fun, and I really enjoyed the last novella with Edge Dancer. Edge Dancer was a lot of fun, so I'm hoping that this one is another one that, because of its truncated length and because it's focusing on like a one-off adventure, that it will be a little bit more engaging, a little bit more snappy, whereas the mainline books are very long and plotting. So I am enjoying this one. I don't know much about the characters just yet. We've seen them interact with some of the major players from the larger series as a whole, but I haven't really seen where it's going yet. They've just basically taken the job, and we'll see where it goes, but I am enjoying it so far. That's it so far as like what I've read recently for my Epic series. I will say I did finally get the audiobook for the 12th book in the Dresden Files, and so I'll be listening to that. That's Turncoat. I'm sorry, 11th book. 11th book is Turncoat, and then I'll have Changes and a few others. So I need to get up to book 16, but I am still making progress on that very slowly. It's just I've not picked up a book in that series in a little bit since I was exploring these other ones. And again, Oathbringer took me a month to get through, so I'm hoping that Rhythm of War reads a little bit quicker. As always, I hope your reading journey is going well. I hope you are getting into the books that you enjoy, and you are having fun reading whatever genre and titles you are interested in. If you are a fan of the Stormlight Archives, of Sanderson, of Mistborn, and you have thoughts about anything I've said in this video, please put them down below and let me know so we can have a chat about it. Love it, hate it, somewhere in between. It's all good. So just let me know how you feel. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. The number one thing you can do to help me grow this channel is hit that thumbs up button. That does make it to where the algorithm will show this to more people. But yeah, I hope you're having a wonderful day. And until the next one, take care.